Hi, my name is natekokernot, and I want to welcome you to my channel. In my last video, I started laying out the evidence that points to history being cyclical in nature. It is something that has been a part of my worldview for the last 5 years now, since first being exposed to the authors William Strauss and Howe, and I can report that the effect it has had on me as this new information is being integrated in with my belief in A Course in Miracles teachings is that now I'm watching world events more like one who is waiting for a train to pull into the station right on schedule, rather than as one who is fretting and worried about the ensuing chaos and unpredictability that is clearly unfolding. Now, my orientation towards the news is more like an acceptance that this crisis period is destined to unfold now, along with an anticipation for the springtime awakening that is destined to rise up from the ashes once this destructive energy is finished. As I said in my last video, Strauss and Howe did an exhaustive job in their first book, Generations, of diving into all the details of the last 500 years of American history to supply more than ample evidence that these patterns do indeed take shape repeatedly. The authors have both a big picture view, which I refer to as intuitive, and as a natural preference for seeing patterns and connecting dots, and a detail-oriented view, which is more focused on the concrete details, in the same way that a macro lens looks upon images. Their theory is quite fascinating to me as well because it integrates Jungian archetypes into its framework, giving each generation an archetypal symbol. Each one again repeats itself every fourth generation in a revolving door kind of a way. The present-day cycle, which includes everyone under the age of 82 at the time I'm writing this. The elders of this period are called the millennial cycle by the authors, are those we know as the baby boomers. They were born anywhere from 1943 until 1960, and they are the archetypal prophets. They are the idealists and the moralists. They are generally focused inward. Next came my generation, Generation X, whose births took place between 1961 and 1981. We're typically the lone wolves of this post-industrial period. Our archetypal symbol is the nomad, and our energy is reactive. We were the first children of the divorce epidemic, and we often grew up being left to our own devices, either as latchkey kids or just home alone after school, to be babysat by our televisions, as many of our mothers were going back to work instead of staying home. The millennials, born from 1982 until 2003, are the archetypal heroes. Contrasting them with the baby boomers is most effective in that they are polarized from them in two ways. For one, they're more outward focused, and secondly, their energy is more civic-minded. The last generation in this era, known as Generation Z, are the artists. Their energy is adaptive, and they are the ones who will comment on these times through artistic expression. They were born from 2004 until 2026, which of course means that the next generation will start popping out very soon. If we look back to the cycle before this one, which the authors called the Great Powers Cycle, the silent generation, which included people like Bob Dylan, who were born from 1925 to 1942, they were the artists of that cycle. The GI generation, born from 1901 until 1924, were the heroes of that cycle, and wouldn't you know it, they were the ones who fought World War II for the most part. They're like the millennials in our cycle. Howe and Strauss point out how the energetic dynamics keep shifting as a result of the coming of age of these different generations, as well as from the tensions between the different generations that are currently alive. A lot of the tension is often between the heroes and the prophets, represented in this cycle respectively as the millennials and the baby boomers. They are both more assertive and dominant in their styles of leadership than the artists and the nomads are, who are typically more recessive. But again, the millennials are more civic-minded and more focused on changing the external world, while the boomers are idealists and focused on changing things in the internal world, imagining new ideas rather than constructing new societies. The Hey Boomer moment that kind of went viral a few years ago and was primarily experienced as conflict between the boomers and the millennials, is an excellent example of this tension. Howe and Strauss saw many patterns form around the events of different periods and the stack of generations that were presently alive at the times. They could see a type of climate repeated, for instance, every time the heroes were coming into power, just as the prophets were aging out of power. The nomads and the artists, on the other hand, are less drawn to power in the first place, which is why there was only one president, Joe Biden, from the last artist generation, known as the silent generation. So Howe and Strauss ask us to imagine the generations as trains, and they ask us to picture the events that unfold as train stations. And we could go one step further and picture the whole thing as a model train in your basement, which, if it's like most model trains, is cyclical and repeating. The other cycle they use to describe the times, rather than the people, in their framework, is seasons. Right now, as I said in my last video, they consider us to be in the winter, or in the crisis times, if you like. This is a period of collapsing institutions and of war and destruction. It's also a time when we take solace in our family structures, as the rest of the external world is clearly more turbulent. It does come around roughly every 80 to 90 years, so perhaps we shouldn't be so surprised that it's happening again right now. It is right on schedule. But if you're like me, you'll also take comfort in knowing that spring is coming. The next spring season is scheduled to start approximately around 2030. 22 years after the onset of winter, which, by the author's estimates, began around the time of the housing collapse of 2008. The spring season is also known as the outer-driven era, and is expressed as a period when, quote, society turns toward conformity and stability. Triumphant ideals are secularized, and spiritual discontent is deferred, end quote. I look forward to this period as one in which perhaps the postmodern ethos, that everyone's truth is independent and distinct from everyone else's, is clearly showing its short-sightedness. The realization that this ethos leads to chaos is coming clearly into the light of our awareness, and now perhaps it's time once again for us all to search for a capital T truth that everyone could get behind. This explains why most A Course in Miracles students, as well as practitioners of other spiritual paths that I know, are all feeling quite optimistic right now, even as the world appears to be crumbling to dust around them. The next season to come after that, summer of course, will be considered another awakening era, and it will trigger, quote, cultural creativity and the emergence of new ideals as institutions built around old values are challenged by the emergence of a spiritual awakening. The summer period, which comes next around 2052 or so, at that time the millennials will clearly be in charge. They'll hold most of the seats of power. It will feel somewhat like the 60s and 70s. The next autumn season, which I guess is loosely predicted to begin around 2074, and which could also be identified within their framework as an inner-driven era, will be experienced as one where, quote, individuality flourishes. New ideas are cultivated in separate camps. Confidence in institution declines, and secular problems are deferred, end quote. This will be like a repeat of the 1980s and 90s, which, if you're old enough to remember it, was a time when we, as a nation, were putting more value on individual freedoms over collective responsibilities. Then, of course, the next crisis period will arrive, or wintertime, around 2096. The crisis era, quote, opens with growing collective unity in the face of perceived social peril, and culminates in a secular crisis in which danger is overcome and one set of new ideals triumphs, end quote. It goes around and around like this, and yes, you'll have to either read one of their books or listen to a podcast interview like the one that I'll share in the More section below, if you want to get more into the details and see for yourself that their research was indeed rigorous. It is quite plain to see, and it is not coincidental. Just like nature has seasons, so does the life cycle. The same patterns present themselves on many levels once you start to pay attention to it. And the news? Well, maybe the news isn't exactly new, after all. It's more like a rerun of a television sitcom episode, dressed up with new technologies, new fashion, and new style. But archetypally, each era has general themes in common with themes that were experienced exactly a lifetime ago. If it makes sense that what we're really seeking, as we seek for material goods and as we seek for ways to be liked by others, is really more heightened emotions, and if you accept the premise that the more heightened emotions are really nothing more than those with an absence of fear, then it will make sense to you how holding the perspective on history is beneficial to our feeling better. As I experience it, it's a part of my worldview that makes the future more predictable, and also less alarming when the scene plays out yet again as it was scripted to. In the videos to come, I'll connect some dots between the cyclical view of history put forth by Howe and Strauss and what they're saying in the latest field of study that I've been familiarizing myself with of late, astrology. I'll demonstrate how astrology, on another level of human understanding, is consistent with the findings of these two historians, all for the purpose of hopefully overwhelming you with evidence that points to the possibility that Shakespeare was correct when he floated the idea that all the world is a stage and all the men and women merely players. None of this, which we refer to as life, is really all that meaningful if it's really nothing more than a repetition of the same script told again and again and again. We do move forward according to my understanding of how these cycles play out. New paradigm shifts arise out of each crisis period. But the forward motion, it's more like a spiral than a straight line. You could picture one of those circular ramps in a large parking structure. I'm hopeful that the paradigm that is gaining traction in the collective right now is that we are, first and foremost, a collective one being, or one mind, in truth. As I peruse YouTube with my individualized algorithm, I see plenty of evidence, as I watch videos on how consciousness, for instance, might very well be our fundamental reality rather than space and time. We will hopefully abandon our individual beliefs and values in favor of harmony and in favor of a deeper appreciation for the fact that we are all in this together, and we have one united agenda, and that is for life to continue to flourish here on Earth. Not our little individuated lives so much, but the big life of which we are all an integral part. If you're finding these ideas helpful and conducive to your peace of mind, then I'm getting my point across to you, and I would really appreciate it if you liked and subscribed to this channel. Right now, what we don't need is more fear. Right now, the algorithm favors fearful messages over ones that promise love and light, simply because right now, fear is trending. But just a click on the like button can alter that algorithm to love over time. And love, which is the awareness of that great connectivity, is the only thing that will prevail over fear. Have a wonderful day full of blessings and miracles, and I'll see you again next time.